Law firms have historically actually made a lot of money and a lot of profit out of being very inefficient.
It's becoming more transparent where the money's going. People are asking for line items really detailed on bills.
What's going to happen now with this influx of AI?
They're saying, how are we still going to be relevant and known as a top firm in 1, 3, 5 years' time?
Surely lawyers are absolutely crazy right now if they don't address these questions.
I can almost build a law firm by clicking my fingers, and the next day I have a law firm out of a box. Start playing around with it. I talk about something called the AI gut.
This feels like a really big moment in history.
Absolutely.
Law firms have built fortunes on inefficiency. Billable hours, endless due diligence, work for the sake of work. But that model is cracking. AI is changing everything. Dan Hobson, head of Asia at Vlex, joins me to break down how AI is reshaping law, why human connection is the new differentiator, and where real opportunity is for the lawyers willing to work smarter.
So Dan, law firms have historically actually made a lot of money and a lot of profit out of being very inefficient. Partners have historically loved discovery exercises, loved due diligence. What's going to happen now with this influx of AI? Is this really what the partners want?
It's a very good question, and a good place to start straight in. I see a mix. I work with hundreds of law firms implementing AI, and the reasons behind that transformation differ on every occasion. Sometimes I work with law firms who want to implement AI to increase the quality of life of their staff, give them hours back in their days, their weekends, their free times, etc. But there is a massive concern about what it's going to do to the revenue aspects. You think of scenarios where a big due diligence comes in. That's a huge amount of hourly billable work. And it's not the highly skilled, complex, strategic elements of law that require a partner to be involved day to day. And yeah, it's a good money maker, but it's also where AI is going to take the biggest chunk of work. It's that I always talk about these buckets. AI's best fit is for things that are detailed, time consuming, but not overly interpretive, open to kind of reasoning. It's just extraction of fact and sifting through mass amounts of data. And those tend to be the kind of profit-rich, margin-gaining tasks for law firms. And that's going to change. That's really going to change. And I think what's so interesting is partners sat around at board meetings now, they can't be looking at, right, where's the margin-rich parts of the work? And how do we get more of that? The question, and rightly so, much more has to be, how do we add value on top of that lower skilled transactional work? Where do we differentiate ourselves from other firms? And I actually think that that's a really healthy direction for law firms to move in. And I see it. I'm seeing people already doing it. They're not saying, how do we get more work? How do we get better value work and margin rich work? They're saying, how are we still going to be relevant and known as a top firm in 1, 3, 5 years' time as these lower skilled elements of practicing law start to get more and more automated by technologies like AI?
And something you've said a lot on social media that I've seen is that connection and people skills are actually more important than ever in law. Is that connected for you with this sense of adding this additional value?
I do completely believe that as the reliance on technology increases, so does the need for human connection. If everyone's using the same tools to do certain tasks, they're going to be choosing which law firm they use based on who they want in their corner, who they trust when they pick the phone up to. That's going to be huge. There's going to be much more around personal brand, law firm brand, and that's going to carry a huge amount of weight, because even like I work for an AI vendor, right? So I work in an organization that builds tools with AI to do the practice of law. And even at that level, we're using similar underlying systems to our competitors. The differentiation is who's holding the hand of a law firm through that often painful transformation into a new world that they know nothing about. And it's all about who do people want in their corner more than who's got the biggest wealth of resources at their disposal and things like that, which always used to set firms apart. So it's certainly an interesting change in that landscape.
This is absolutely huge. This is completely groundbreaking. When I think back to my trainee days back in 2013, 2014, it had to be done this way, but bodies were just thrown at matters. The reason you would often go to the magic or the silver circle, it wasn't always expertise, bit controversial, but it was because they had the huge capacities to actually deal with these massive cases. If a lot of that grunt work is taken away from people, if actually now it's not just about being one of the law firms who can take this on, but you've got to be the chosen person, somebody who people want to be connected with, this landscape is fundamentally different. And I just wonder how that's going to look for lawyers who haven't cultivated necessarily the reputations, the brands and the people skills. And does this open up a new future for different lawyers and different types of law firm?
Absolutely. The point you finished on there is different types of law firm. I think as technology changes the landscape somewhat, the way that people want to interact with law firms is going to change. And the systems that law firms have to interact with customers coming to take legal services is going to change. If you take an example of those juniors coming fresh out of university with their degrees and they're wondering, where do I fit in at a big firm who's automating roles that I could do? If you take it back to why do you want to go to a big firm? You want to go to a big firm because of their reputation. It's good to have on your CV for your career. They will probably have incredible business development models that get work coming through the door. So there's just an endless pile for you to do. You don't have to worry about where's your next piece of billable work coming from. And you won't have to worry about billing, business systems, admin, these kind of bits that make up a law firm. And traditionally, the bigger the law firm, the better processes they have in place for these kind of things. But what I'm starting to see, and I do most of my work in the APAC region, so Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and we're starting to see this huge shift in big traditional firms. And you get people that have reached maybe that fourth or fifth year into practice. It's still a long way to go to partnership, but they now see that there's tools, there's business systems that are so easy to set up, practice management systems, billing systems, all in one platform. So they can go, I can almost build a law firm by clicking my fingers, and the next day I have a law firm out of a box. And you build into that some business development capabilities and all of the business aspects of running a law firm, and suddenly the reliance on large law is slightly less advantageous. If you can build that business system yourself within that market and start to build your own brand, what you are then taking to market is you and your skills and your knowledge of your area of law. Again, I just think it creates a really healthy, competitive market.
I am so excited by this. And I know when we were having coffee the other day, you dropped in that term law firm out of a box. And my mind just almost exploded because this completely changes law. I mean, who knows? If this had all been possible a few years ago, even when I left law, maybe I'd have thought differently because it just completely changes the landscape and the possibility for people. And as you pointed out to me the other day, we actually have a lot of overlap in what we do because I talk about path to partnership or path to whatever the hell you want. Let's just create this. How do we do this? And I feel like AI could really make this possible in a totally new way. What's your view on that?
I completely agree, because one of the classic shifts in roles that I see of people who have spent a long time at a large law, they then go to the bar and they love it. They have their autonomy. They're basically self-employed. But what they now have to start doing is their research again. They have to build their own chronologies. They have to read 300-page expert testimony witnesses, statements and things like that. And they are suddenly doing the work of a partner and the work of the 3 juniors that they had at their disposal at large law. And actually, the reason that most people tell me they move from large law to the bar is that balance, that quality of life, that balance of kind of work life. We are in that era where people want more of their life back. It's less about the grind and the hustle, and people want to be able to deliver a great service, but it not encroach onto the entirety of their life. So AI is proving hugely supportive and beneficial to people making those moves, either starting these boutique firms that offer specific services and do a really good job in that avenue, or people moving from a 10, 15, 20 year big law career into the bar where they can choose their own work, choose their own hours, choose what they do. 5, 10 years ago, if you were to do that, you're picturing yourself on the phone chasing clients for money at 10 o'clock in the evening because you had to do your practice of law during the day, and then you're running your business, you're paying your office rent, you're doing all of these things that you just don't have to do when you're a partner at a large law firm. But if we can automate the bits that are automatable and just leave people who start their own firms up to deliver the law, or at least as close to it as possible, there's always going to be things that need doing, but it creates new opportunities for this. There's less reliance on a traditional system, I suppose.
Because in the traditional system, we've actually still got a problem here, right? Because we've still got the billable hour. So associates, partners, fee earners, they still have to hit their 7-8 hours a day chargeable or whatever it is. So it's like, great, AI's made you more efficient, but you've still got to hit that target, regardless of the value you're delivering. And I feel like this here is potentially a really interesting area and the discrepancy where people are going to say, actually, I don't want that anymore. I can do something on my own, or I can join a different type of law firm, which is maybe more value-based, or a way of living life without that constant pressure, that constant sense of burnout.
Yeah, and I do a lot of consultancy and sitting with leaders of law firms around what their financial structures will look like. And I think it will take a certain amount of time before the shift happens in a major sense. But we're already seeing law firms look towards more of an output-based model than a billable hour type model, where if you are a big corporate entity and you're outsourcing work to law firms, if they can automate part of it that you outsource, you can automate part of it by insourcing it. But you could also say, right, I'm going to give you this work, but I expect it back in less time because you've got AI, but I'm not going to pay you by the hour. I'm going to pay you because I just want it done. So what ends up happening is the law firm uses AI, gets it done quicker, charges a substantial fee. The corporate team get it back quicker so they can serve their business better. And everyone wins in that chain of billing. The client pays slightly less, but gets it quicker. The law firm still makes a good chunk of money, but spends less resources on it. So that's just one example. And you've got to break down, if we are just looking at a kind of big private practice law firm, there's so many different tasks that a law firm does, and each of them fit into a different billing model well. So some might go to output based, some might stay on time, some might change to something completely different. And I think law firms have to spend a lot of time looking internally and going, what's the best structure for us? So rather than go, as a firm, we're moving from hourly billing to flat fee output based, it's right, let's break our law firm down into all the little tasks it does. What's the best way to bill for that for us? What's the best way to bill for that for our customer? Because the only changes that stick in an industry like this are ones that work for everyone, especially going forwards. I think the advantage has been on the side of the law firm for so long because of the resources that they've got at their disposal and because of the lack of knowledge that people outside the law firm have. But that's shifting. It's becoming more transparent where the money's going. People are asking for line items really detailed on bills because there's this feeling that this could be done better. And as that starts to happen, it's going to have to be an agreement of, right, we want it to be good for you because we still want to outsource work for you. I speak with corporate teams, and I went to a load of conferences when AI first came along, and everyone was like, wow, we don't need to outsource to external counsel. We can just do everything ourselves. And maybe at a business level, maybe at that corporation level, that's an idea. But if you ask those in-house general counsel lawyers, if they want to take the work in-house that a private law firm's doing for them, no, they don't. They just don't want to get ripped off outsourcing it. So there's so many layers of these things to think about, and it can't be tarred with a single brush. It needs to be analysed on a layer by layer basis. But the shift is already happening. We're seeing it, and it's going to be those firms that are willing to roll up their sleeves and really analyse it to work out what's win-win, rather than those still trying to make huge high margins where probably shouldn't be high margin work.
Just pausing for a second to ask a small favour. This is a brand new podcast, and every follow, review or share helps more than you know. It means I can create more episodes, bring on more top guests and thought leaders, and share the secret lessons and tools that help you build influence, find purpose, and create a career and life you actually jump out of bed for. If that speaks to you, please hit subscribe. It really does make a difference. Now, back to the episode. And I think what I love about your approach just generally is this sense of that there isn't one size that fits all in this. You can't just say, here's a system, right, all law firms need this. There's a sense of actually really getting down into the detail and the nitty gritty of the business and perhaps the individuals as to what do you want, what do you need, what do your clients want, and then linking that to goals and aspirations. Well, if you want those kind of clients, what kind of systems do you need? It's sort of laying those foundations first. I'm wondering what surprised you recently in the APAC region in terms of what law firms have been asking for, or even some crazy questions that have been coming up around this.
I think one of the things that I found most interesting is, like, prior to AI, we were a legal publisher. So we used to just sell access to law. And the conversation was, do you want it? Yes or no. Such a simple conversation. They either need access to this law or they don't, based on their practice. I now, when I sit and speak to a firm, have to ask them about, why are you looking at AI? Like, on a personal level, we have 2 million clients. And if I interviewed each of them and said, why are you implementing AI? The answer is unique to each of them. You see trends, you see things that are standard in a particular industry, but even to the level of, are you a top heavy law firm in terms of, have you got more partners than juniors, or have you got huge resources at the lower end of the law firm? That changes how you roll out AI. The level of seniority, the percentage of partners, all of these things, and even practice area by practice area. Some jobs are traditionally transactional and administrative heavy. Some are, you are most likely to win your case the more time you spend critical thinking. That can't be automated. The role of AI and its influence is completely different by practice area, shape of firm, culture within the firm, and then how you roll it out, how you do these things. There's still fear around AI and technology, and I see it. I've had the honor and pleasure of helping so many people through this transition. I have seen the benefits in waves for these firms. And I think there's still a big shift to go, and that will start to cement what the future looks like as more people start to take those leaps and address these difficult questions. They're questions that need addressing. How am I going to build? What's our place in the market? Do we need to be this big? There's pain to go through there. But the people who address it now, in a year, 2, 3, they're going to be in a much better position.
Surely lawyers are absolutely crazy right now if they don't address these questions.
Yeah, but the market hasn't shifted enough to not be making money and doing a good job in the traditional world. And I actually had a phone call from they are the owner of a law firm. It was in New Zealand, and they rang me. They had seen on LinkedIn all this stuff about agentic AI, law firms that are now, they are AI law firms and things like that. And it sounds so futuristic. And they were worried that they were falling behind. But one of the benefits of working across so many regions and working with so many practices is I know where the general dial of where an average law firm is, and they were miles ahead of it. But their perception was that they were miles behind. And I think that's kind of good because it drives action. But I don't think we're at the point currently where law firms, if they aren't thinking about it, can't continue. I think if they're not thinking about it now, they'll be in trouble in a year or two. But as these technologies sophisticate, but I don't think we're there quite yet. So my advice is always start playing around with it. You don't have to completely document your strategy of new technology and how you're going to take it to market and all of that right now. But what I encourage people to do is play around with it, get a feel for it, and let that start to formulate so that when your clients start asking, what are you doing about this? You have the experience enough to be able to give them an answer. And that's, I talk about something called the AI gut. It's a term that I coined and started using when I was doing public speaking. And there is no amount of training that an AI expert can give someone until the light bulb goes on and click, I understand this technology. I give people access to this technology, and they then tend to ask hundreds of questions for about a month. Then it tails off a bit in the next month. And by the end of about the third month, they stop speaking to me. And I think, have I offended them? Did they give up and throw it out the window? But actually what's happened is this inner intuition has clicked on. And they now know what's a good use case for AI, what's not. If it is a good use case, how to get the best result out of what they're doing. And I genuinely refer to it as building an AI gut. When people are talking about they don't know what direction to go in and they don't know how to wield these new technologies, it's like if you were speaking to someone who wanted to get fitter and they wanted to be a good runner, I'd just say go running. I wouldn't tell them how to perfect their stride so that they can win the 100-meter dash. I'd tell them to go running. And after 3 months, they'd probably know that, oh, if I start too fast, it doesn't go well. If I start too slow, I haven't used all my energy. Like, they just build that by doing it. AI is exactly the same. Just start playing around with it. Not even in your practice of law, if you're really worried about it. You don't have to be dropping confidential documents in. Just start rewording emails, start playing around with what's possible. And my job is to consult and advise, but the more people can do that for themselves, the better. And the only way to do that is to build your familiarity with these things.
And I love your running analogy with this, because you literally do run around the whole of APAC, right? I'm following you on Instagram, and every single day you're in a different country. You're running around Singapore. I don't know. How do we keep up with you? But I love this lifestyle you've got with it.
It's become so fun. Like, I consider myself part of the legal industry, but I don't work in law. I work in technology. It excites me. I get to travel around the world, meet interesting people. And I realized that the way that I could add value to the industry that I'm part of is to sit in a room with the people in the position of using these kind of technologies that are in these law firms. And the reason that today I'm able to help law firms is for the past 2 years, I've spent my time flying around the countries that I work in, sitting in offices with people, understanding how the law works in that region, in that practice for that individual. And yeah, I mean, in my spare time, I get to run around some beautiful cities and countries and do some nice things, but it's all part of this. And it's got to the point now where I clearly love what I do. Even hopefully sat here, your viewers can see
Dan, I believe
that there's an enjoyment coming out of what I do. And I leave conference or doing a big integration piece with a large law firm, and I've got to the point where I receive emails from people in the legal practice that are saying, I don't quite know what my role at a tech vendor like yourselves would be, but I've now got 5 years legal experience. I've done 3 months of AI with you, so I understand where it fits. I believe that my knowledge of these two industries has a value, rather than like traditional legal path in a career is start paralegal, you move to junior associate, senior associate. That's been the traditional path for a long time. But we're seeing a real appetite for people who are seeing the excitement around technology. They want to be involved. They want to be shaping the way things look in the future. And I think the percentage of our teams that are now lawyers is increasing by the year. The percentage of CVs that we get applying for jobs are increasingly from a legal background. And there's huge money in it. If you have tech experience, you're worth X amount. If you have legal experience, you're worth X amount. If you have legal tech experience, there is some serious price tags on that now. And that's a new career path for this. Imagine being halfway through your legal career as AI comes along and you're in that sweet spot of I know both. I'm part of a generation that understands the way things have been done, but can see the potential of what's coming. About vendor side or legal side anymore. Those lines are blurring. Law firms are hiring so many more technology staff, and technology teams are hiring so many more legal staff. So the role of a vendor in the legal space is becoming so much more reliant and a big wielder of power in terms of what the future looks like. And that's why I spend so much time just sitting, literally about 20% of my time I sit with barristers or I sit with lawyers, and my question, and it seems like I'm almost taking the mick somewhat, but I just say to them, what part of your job do you not want to do?
All of it?
Straight faced, yeah. But this is the thing, people go into law because they love parts of legal practice. They leave the law because they're doing the bits they don't love. It's the same with any job. About 30% of my job I would cut off and hand off to someone else tomorrow, but I need to do it to be able to do the rest. And I actually see legal industry as one that's so fortunate that the bits that are getting automated tend to be the bits that no one wants to do. That's amazing, right? That's a huge opportunity. The role of the lawyers to advise the vendors to support. We have to advise on what's possible. They have to tell us what that means to them. And without both, this is why these conferences that I've spent all my time going to now are so interesting, because it's just these coming together of brains to say, what will the future look like? And that leads to conversations around ethics, responsibility, all of this. There's so much to think about. And I'm quite glad you asked earlier if people aren't doing it currently, is that dangerous for them? And yes, start playing around with it. But if it had happened at the speed everyone thought it was going to happen, there would be big mistakes happening. And it needs to be done with care. It needs to be done with a thoughtful process through every aspect of where it's being applied. And I think we've got that time at the moment, but we all need to be having that conversation, whether vendor or lawyer.
Because it does give some law firms a huge advantage, right? If they're using all of the top new AI software, and there are other firms who are not using any or just using a little bit here and there. I mean, I suppose on the one hand, you could say that's a huge discrepancy and potentially an issue. On the other hand, you could say, actually, if there are reasonably entrepreneurial lawyers who are willing to just go out there and go, hey, Dan, where do I start? How do I create this law firm out of a box? Maybe there's an opportunity for different types of law firm to pop up, different types of people to grow businesses. And I suppose personally, a place I always come from is I think collectively there's a real space at the moment to make law a better place.
Yep.
I think we need leaders with heart, with backbone, who aren't burning themselves and everyone else out around them. Does AI present an opportunity for us here?
Absolutely. And when we first connected on LinkedIn, the light bulb went on. It was so interesting because you've been through the career of going from starting at a big law firm, ending up being a partner. And I'm sure there's things that you learned along the way where you could have got to that outcome with less pain and stress and exhaustion along the way.
Massively.
And you tackle that from the human approach. What can that person in that scenario do based on their dynamic with their co-workers, based on how they approach their work, what they let in, what energy they give to, etc. You're approaching it from the human perspective. But AI slots in so well there as well because it's almost like a crutch that people can lean on. Someone described it as an e-bike. It's like you still got a pedal, you just don't have to exhaust yourself going up the hills. And that mindset bit that you do, that social element of how do I navigate the politics of a law firm, the perceived pressures on me, and then as one of my tools, how do I implement technology? And I think that's why I was so interested to have this conversation and the conversations that we've had over the last couple of weeks, because it all ties together. If you're one of these entrepreneurial middle-level lawyers that branches out on their own, chances are they're going to be thinking very similarly to how I think about tech and how you think about the person in the organization. And these smaller firms with 5, 10, 15 people that are actually taking on large cases that you'd expect to under-resourced to deal with them, they actually seem to be thriving. Like from an energy of the staff, from an enjoyment, from a working with close, good teams perspective. So yeah, I do think there's a lot more to be talked about in that space, and the mindset, the career path of people in these positions complemented by technology. I think it gives a lot of new options, that you no longer have to look at a legal task and say, this is how it's been done for 30 years, this is how it needs to be done. This is the output that's been needed for 30 years, and we still need the output. How do we find a different path now? Because there's new tools than there was 30 years ago to get there without getting there exhausted, drained, burnt out, which is a phrase that you hear so much in the legal industry.
It's just so interesting to me because people obviously come to me for coaching, and the number of incredible lawyers I speak to who say, Helen, I just feel completely stuck in my career. I don't have the skill set to do anything else. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling really down. And it feels like now actually there is so much more possibility both inside and outside of law. If that person was sitting with us now and saying that, what would you say to them, Dan?
There's so much that can be done. And I think there's now becoming so many more career paths within law. Even legal tech is one thing. I'm seeing a boom in legal consultancy, like helping law firms do things better. And you could probably name 10 different career paths that have popped up over the past year down to technology. And the onus is obviously then on the individual to explore, go to conferences, meet people. Every time I go to a conference, I find out about a company that does something that I thought I had no idea that existed. Or I meet someone with a role. In fact, I met someone at a conference this year, and it was the first time I'd met someone with the same role as me. So it means that so many people have walked around the world not knowing my role exists. And I class myself, I work in a commercial role, so I have revenue targets and I manage a team and things like that. But what I look at as my career is adoption consultancy. I sit at board level rather than at tech level, and I advise on the culture of adoption, strategic plans for adopting new technology, what products fit in well in which spaces. And this is a whole new arm of consultancy. And I have CEOs of mid-sized law firms coming to me quarterly and asking for advice. There is no way that 5 or 10 years ago, someone at a board level of a 200, 300, 400 person law firm is going to be asking someone in legal tech for strategic direction on how to run their law firm. But these are now roles that exist, and there is so much more than it seems. And if you're sat in the law firm, you're probably not exposed to them as much, but conferences are a great place for that. Go and network, go to conferences, just see what lights you up a little bit. I think that's so important, like being lit up and interested about your work. Go and find what seems interesting in that new legal space, because there's so much money being poured into it. There's careers popping up all over the place. And if you have legal experience, it's so valuable, not just in a law firm. It's so valuable in so many places now. Just because you trained in law doesn't mean you cannot be fantastic in technology or business or whatever. Go and explore. That's always the funnest part. Go and explore, go and network, go and see who looks like they're enjoying their job and is doing something that you find interesting, and go and explore it.
I love that. I love that. It's just so much positivity and possibility. And I think it helps move people into a mindset of what can I create? What can I achieve, rather than my options are limited. And I suppose finally to ask you, Dan, what do you think is the most exciting thing at the moment that AI is creating or offering the legal industry?
It's offering change, and I think that's magical. Law has been conducted in a certain way for a very long time. We are at this point where technology is developed enough to make a huge impact now, but the path hasn't been set. We are all at this brink of transformation, and we all get a say in what that looks like next. What the legal industry looks like in 10 years is down to what managing partners are saying now, consultants like myself are saying now, technology experts are saying now. There's been this huge mindset shift, but it hasn't transformed into practice yet. We are at this brink, and in 5 years' time, we'll look back and go, that was a significant moment, and we can all be part of that now. And that's what gets me out of bed every morning, for sure.
This feels like a really big moment in history.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we're here for it in Bali.
Well, that's it. Imagine a legal job that allowed two people to not be lawyers currently, sat here talking about the future of law on comfy seats in Bali. That doesn't happen 5 years ago. That doesn't happen 10 years ago. The opportunities are extraordinary now, and it's there for the taking.
If this episode made you think, the next one will make you rethink everything. Dan shares in part 2 how he built purpose, freedom, and impact from Bali, of all places. And he also talks about how giving back through community and his charity cafe became the heartbeat of his success. It's one of those rare stories that makes you stop, breathe, and ask, what could I really do if I put my mind to it? Hit subscribe and don't miss part 2 coming soon.